Have you ever said or done something and thought, oh my God, I sound just like my mother right now? Or like, oh my God, that sounded like my dad. We swear we'll never end up like our parents, but sometimes we do or say things and we're like, how did that just come out of my mouth? The question is, why do we become like our parents no matter how hard we try not to? Physical traits are one thing. Like, obviously, you can inherit your dad's nose or your mom's eyes, but what is it with the habits and the toxic traits, like they're short fused or addiction problems? Today I'm going to explain a few reasons as to why we inherit our parents' toxic traits. So our parents' behavior was our first mirror of reality. When we're in the ages of 0 to 7, our brains are in what's called a theta brainwave state. So at this age, our brains are like sponges and we're just really absorbing everything around us and learning what the world is, how it works, how do we behave, what is life, how do we be a human. Everything that we think and know, for the most part, comes in this age frame. And when you're in this age frame, the most interaction that you have is with your parents. So that's where you're going to learn the most. So if you have parents who are repeatedly doing certain things, like maybe fighting, or maybe you're learning that you throw a temper tantrum to get what you want, or maybe you're learning that if somebody does something to make you mad, the first thing you do is yell at them, or certain toxic behaviors. If that's what you learn, that is absorbed into your brain and you learn that right away, and that follows with you through to adulthood. And our brains are shaped by repetition, so we mimic what we see. So if you constantly see your parents fighting, you're going to grow up thinking that that's a normal way to behave and a normal thing to accept in relationships, and you're going to seek out relationships where fighting is a normal thing. The more that you see something, the more that it makes an imprint on your brain. When we're in this age, we're watching our parents' behaviors and the way that they're speaking to people, their tones, their reactions, their mannerisms, all of these things. We're watching everything. We're really learning every little thing from our parents, things that you wouldn't even really think about, really taking everything in and learning how to behave as a human. So it's called early childhood conditioning, and it's down to the minuscule things. Even like if there's a certain phrase that your mother says a lot that you catch yourself saying as an adult that you're like, where did that come from? It was stored in your brain that you heard her say a lot as a kid. And this can be good things or bad things. Maybe you used to watch your mother bake in the kitchen or your dad work on cars in the garage. It doesn't have to be toxic things. Maybe now, if you watch your parents do those things are things that you showed an interest in as an adult. Because somewhere in your brain, you absorbed that those are really good things to do. They're nostalgic to you. There's a toxic side to this as well. Maybe your mom was a pushover and let everyone walk all over her. So in the early stages of life, you learned that women are pushovers. And if you're a woman, now you're a pushover. Children learn from instruction, but more than that, they learn from modeling. So when they're watching, they're taking all of that in. So when we're watching our parents as kids, we're taking everything in. So if you see, your parents fighting, if you see your dad avoiding confrontation, avoiding feeling his emotions, avoiding, wanting to have those vulnerable conversations, you're going to grow up and do the same things, especially if you're seeing it time and time again from them. Whatever you see repetitively from your parents as a kid is absorbed into your brain and taught to be normal to you, and then you're going to carry that into adulthood, and that's going to be what your brain finds as normal. You adopt these behaviors and take them on as your own. No matter how much you say you don't want to be like your parents, and you swear you're not going to be like them, and you can put all the effort into that you want to, you have no control over it until you actively try to heal these things. If you're not aware of any of this and you're just living your life saying you're not going to be like your parents, you absorbed all of this information at a very young age, at a time where your brain was developing in a way that it's taking everything in. So you're going to be just like your parents. Another thing is familiarity feels safe to your brain. Your brain is always looking to feel safe, and your brain rationalizes familiarity and safety. So whatever's familiar to it is what it's looking for. So if when you were a kid, fighting and yelling and arguing and confrontation, if those things were all familiar and normal and what you were used to, then growing up, guess what your nervous system is going to kind of seek out in relationships? Whatever was normal when you were a kid. That's why you subconsciously seek out partners that are similar to your toxic parents, is because your nervous system and your brain want what's familiar to your family. If your mom always used to pick fights with your dad, and you grew up thinking that that was a normal thing to do, that's familiar to you, you're going to grow up constantly picking fights or finding a partner who constantly picks fights. And you might complain about it. You might complain about a partner who constantly picks fights with you, but you're not going to change it until you bring these things to light and heal them. Your nervous system craves safety. Even if it's not the safe thing logically, what's safe to it is what's normal. This is why we continue to choose the same toxic partners again and again, is because that is subconsciously what feels safe and normal to us, because that's what we grew up seeing over and over again. That's why we are uncomfortable in peaceful situations if we grew up in chaos. That's why if we grew up in bad situations, we're not going to know what to do with a peaceful partner, with a peaceful home life. All of your childhood beliefs, so everything that you learned as a child, not even just from absorbing, but everything that you were taught, everything that you absorbed, everything that you learned to be normal, everything that you learned, both from learning from your parents and rationalizations you made in your head, everything that you learned as a child, and all the trauma that you went through and what you learned from that trauma, all of that stores in your body and stays with you until you heal it. If you, let's say you had a very controlling parent, a parent who wanted to know where you were at all times, wanted to control what you wore, wanted to go through your phone, wanted, control over everything. And you just felt like you had no sense of freedom at all whatsoever. When you grow up in this scenario, you're going to end up becoming the controlling parent in an unconscious attempt to, take control back and avoid the chaos. To still have that control that you had, there was control as a kid and now there's control as an adult, but you have the control because you never healed that wound. Until we heal the wounds caused by our parents, we try to resolve them as adults. But the thing is, we don't ever resolve them until we actually heal the wounds. So that resolving that we're subconsciously trying to do is never going to work. And if these wounds aren't healed, they always seek expression in one way, shape, or form. And odds are they're coming out in the only way that you ever knew, because we know what we learned growing up, right? So what did you learn growing up? Whatever your parents taught you. So they're going to be expressed in however your parents expressed them. Was that yelling? Was that being controlling? Whatever your parents did is how they're expressing. And then you're questioning, why am I just like my parent? It's a full circle. And plot twist on that, your parents probably went through the same thing. Their parents were probably the same way. And their parents were probably the same way. It's a generational thing. And if you parent your kid, they're going to be the same way. Like if you parent your kid the same way, they're going to be the same way. You got to break the cycle and heal your wounds so that you don't continue this with your kid. And that's ungenerational trauma. Everyone who talks about wounds from their parents and things they went through as a kid and, trauma from their parents, they say, oh, it'll heal with time. No, it'll get buried with time. You can keep shoving it down. It'll get buried with time. But it's never going to heal. It's going to keep coming around and it'll bubble up from time to time. Life is a spiral, so everything comes back to you until you heal it. So it will come back to you. A big wound that we all have from childhood is emotional neglect. That's a very common childhood wound, especially if you had a narcissistic parent. If you had a narcissistic parent, you have emotional neglect wounds. You might have emotional neglect wounds and not necessarily have a narcissistic parent, but if you have a narcissistic parent, you have emotional neglect wounds, I guarantee you. And the thing with that is if you don't take care of working on those wounds, you're going to do the same thing to your child. And then your child's going to have emotional neglect wounds because you're not able to emotionally connect with your kids no matter how bad you want to. If you don't take care of that wound, you're not going to be able to consistently emotionally connect with your kid. And then your kid's going to have that problem. And then their kid's going to have that problem. And it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be the generational cycle. Break the cycle. Heal your wounds. Do the work. Don't let this affect your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids. And this affects not just your relationship with your kids, but in all aspects of your life. With your friends and your coworkers. You can't connect with people on the levels that you deserve to be able to. You're going to have surface level relationships everywhere in your life. because you don't know how to emotionally connect with people because you didn't learn at that important age of learning relationships. At a young age, you weren't able to, you were deprived of that. You deserved that. You didn't get that. You need to heal that wound. You know, we repeat the past until we heal whatever wound is there in every situation. And that includes, you know, emotional wounds from childhood and things that our parents did. Another way that we end up like our parents is through unconscious programming. Your unconscious mind repeats what it knows until you reprogram it. So that includes whatever you learned as a young kid, you're gonna carry that with you until you reprogram it. So if you learned something at 2 years old, like let's say you learned that you were hard to love when you were 2 years old, until you reprogram that belief, you're gonna believe that for the rest of your life. You learned at a young age that people with a lot of money are more deserving of things than people with not a lot of money. You're gonna carry that with you your whole life until you reprogram that belief. If you learned that throwing a temper tantrum gets you what you want at a young age by watching your parents, you're going to carry that belief with you until you reprogram it. Whatever beliefs you created as a child stay with you until you consciously reprogram them. This can be way more important on your whole life than you think. If you grew up thinking that, you know, you're worthless or hard to love or don't deserve things, think about how that's going to play out for the rest of your life. Think about how that's going to play out when you're going to apply for a job. And they're like, okay, well, you only deserve $12 an hour. But then your friend applies for the same job and they're like, no, I want 15. They're like, okay, you get 15. Or like when it comes to asking people out on a date, you don't feel like you deserve love, so you don't ask somebody out on the date and you miss out on the love of your life. Or you miss out on all these opportunities that could have completely changed your life because you didn't feel deserving. Even everyday situations, if you have low self-esteem or low self-worth or different views, you could, if you believe certain people are worth more than others, or all of these different beliefs can change everyday situations, all because of beliefs that were created when you were a little kid. Your beliefs that you created when you were a child are ways that you're still living by today as an adult. Does that not seem crazy? And those beliefs weren't even yours. Those beliefs that were created when you were a child that you're living by today weren't even your beliefs. They were somebody else's beliefs who were created by somebody else that they probably never reprogrammed. And you're still living by them today. They're not even your beliefs. It's important that you reprogram your adult mind, your adult belief system. Sit with yourself. Does it really make sense to put value on somebody's life based off of the amount of money they have, or where in this country they live, or where in this world that they live, or who they're related to, or what they do for a living? Do you really not deserve anything because you're you? You deserve everything because you're you. You shouldn't accept anything less than what you want because you're you. You don't have to believe what your parents believe just because you feel you owe them anything. If you don't believe the same thing as your parents, that's okay. Maybe your parents believed in that you needed to go to college, but you didn't want to go to college. You don't have to believe in going to college. You know, maybe your parents believe in one religion and you don't want to believe that, you believe in something else. That's a big one. That one drives families apart. That's really hard. But you deserve to believe what you want to believe. You're your own person. You are not your parents, and you're not tied to their beliefs. The good news about all of this is there is a way to fix it. The first thing to do is to become aware and find what triggered you as a kid. You know, what things do you remember triggering you? What triggered you as an adult? You know, make a list. Think about what traits and behaviors do you not want to inherit? Do you see any of those in yourself today? Any of those traits that you don't want? Find what ones you need to remove from your life right now. And it's also important to find compassion for both yourself and your parents, because we are all doing the very best that we can for where we're at and what we have learned this far in life, and what we have learned this far spiritually, and what we believe right now. And your parents probably believed that they're doing the very, very best that they can. They probably believe that they're doing the very best for you, and what they believe is what's best. So maybe you have a grudge towards them. but maybe they're just doing the best that they can with where they're at. So having compassion is really important. Maybe they did something really wrong to you, and if you don't want to have them in your life, that's okay. You deserve to make that decision. I know I personally made the decision not to keep one of my parents in my life. It's important to have an idea of who you do want to be. So whatever those toxic traits are that you want to remove from your life, make sure you have something to replace it with. So what are you going to do instead? Have an idea of who you want to be. Who are you? Who are you? You're not your parents. You don't have to follow in their footsteps and be who they are and go to the same college as them and be the same person as them and be the mini version of them. You're yourself. You're your own person. So figure out who you want to be and what you want to replace those traits with. You know, you aren't tied to those traits. You aren't doomed forever to be like them. You don't have to have your dad's temper. You can fix it. You can get rid of it. You're not tied to it. You don't have to inherit your mom's bad taste in men. That was one that I thought I was stuck with forever. You don't have to have any of those things. You are your own person, and you are on your own path, and you are on your own healing journey. And just because your parents might not be on a healing journey and your parents aren't choosing to, take these traits out of their life, doesn't mean that you can't. Good for you for being the first one to do it. And it's hard to be the first one to do it. And maybe they're not encouraging you. Maybe that's when you take a step back and distance yourself and don't spend as much time with them if they're not going to encourage you. I know, one of my parents wasn't encouraging me on this journey. They were actually draining me on this journey. And it was really hard. And I had to distance myself. And that was really hard. But you have to do what's best for you. And if that means taking a step back from a parent, then that's what that means. But just know that you are not your parent. You are your own person on your own path. You might have come from your parents' DNA and you might have inherited some traits from them, but none of the behaviors and traits that you have right now are things that you're tied to. You can change every single one of them, 100%. Just a little bit of reprogramming in your mind, a little bit of self-work, and you will be just fine. I hope that you got something from this video today. If you did, please let me know down below. I post videos like this every week, so please follow along if you'd like some more. Other than that, I will see you in the next one. Bye.